Hey everyone, ready to dive into something that I think impacts every single one of us?
I'm ready. What's on your mind?
Well, it's work-life balance. I mean, finding that balance, especially these days, sometimes feels impossible, doesn't it?
It can be a real struggle for sure.
It's like chasing a unicorn, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But what if I told you the key to actually finding this balance isn't about just escaping work?
Ooh, I like where this is going.
What if it's more about using emotional intelligence to actually thrive in your career?
That's really interesting. I'm all ears.
So we're actually looking at a podcast called Pathway to Work for this deep dive.
Okay, cool. Never heard of it. What's their angle?
They really dig into how emotional intelligence can be the key to not just surviving your job, but like rocking it.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection to work-life balance.
Right. They say nailing a good work-life balance doesn't just reduce your stress, it can supercharge your productivity,
Wow,
make your relationships stronger,
really?
and yeah, basically just make you feel better overall.
That's a pretty compelling argument. I'm in.
So let's break it down. What are the benefits of work-life balance? Pathway to Work lays out a few pretty solid ones.
Let's hear them.
Okay, first, less stress and burnout,
Okay, that's definitely a plus.
obviously. Second, you'll have sharper focus while you're actually at work.
Makes sense. Hard to focus when you're burned out.
Exactly. And then lastly, you'll have more fulfilling relationships.
That's huge.
Which of those speaks to you the most right now?
Honestly, all of them. But I think especially the relationship piece, it's so easy to let work bleed into your personal life.
Absolutely. And it's not just about feeling good either. Pathway to Work points out that the benefits of work-life balance go way deeper.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you're constantly stressed, what happens? Your brain gets flooded with cortisol.
With stress hormone, right.
Exactly. And while it's super helpful for like dodging danger, it really messes with your brain in the long run.
Yeah, you can't be in fight or flight mode all the time.
It makes it harder to think clearly, make good decisions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not just about feeling grumpy. It actually affects your ability to function.
Exactly. Feeling constantly drained can hold you back in every area of life, not just work.
That's a good point. It's all connected.
But here's the thing. In this crazy, hyper-connected world, work kind of follows us everywhere.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Like, I remember this one time, I was supposed to be on a beach vacation, right? But I spent the first day glued to my phone,
Oh, no.
stressing over work emails. It was such a buzzkill.
It's so hard to switch off completely.
Have you ever felt that pull? Like, technology totally blurs the lines between work and personal time.
All the time. It's like you're never really off the clock.
And that's where Pathway to Work says emotional intelligence can really help.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, it's not about, like, becoming some emotionless robot.
Right.
It's about developing the skills to understand and manage your emotions.
Interesting. So you can make conscious choices instead of just reacting.
Exactly. So you can make decisions that align with your values and goals.
I like that. So how do we actually develop this emotional intelligence?
Well, the Pathway to Work podcast breaks it down into 4 main strategies.
Okay, lay it on me. I need all the strategies I can get.
All right, first up is self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay, I think I get that.
It's basically about understanding your own energy limits
Right.
and what totally drains you, like what tasks or situations leave you feeling completely wiped out.
Ooh, that's a great question to think about. I'm already starting to make a list.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think we all have those energy vampires lurking in our lives.
Definitely. Okay, what's the next strategy?
Next is setting boundaries, which I know it can be awkward,
Yeah, it can be tough.
but it's really about using assertive communication to protect your time and energy.
So it's not just about saying no, it's about communicating your needs effectively.
Right. Like the podcast gives this example. You can say something like, I'm available for work emails between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., but I need evenings to recharge.
Okay, I see. It's setting clear expectations.
Exactly. And Pathway to Work is very clear that setting boundaries is not selfish.
Oh, good. I always feel a little guilty about setting boundaries.
It's about preventing burnout and taking care of yourself so you can actually show up as your best self.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm ready for strategy number 3.
This one's all about empathy.
Empathy. How does that tie into a work-life balance?
Well, it's about considering how your work habits affect the people around you.
Oh, interesting.
Like, if you're always canceling plans because of work, how does that make your friends and family feel?
Yeah, you're right. It can make them feel unimportant.
And it's important to address those feelings and find a better balance.
So it's not just about setting boundaries at work, it's also about being mindful of how our work impacts our personal relationships.
Exactly. And finally, the fourth strategy is all about emotional regulation.
Emotional regulation, huh?
Basically, it's learning how to manage your stress levels, especially when things get crazy busy.
Okay, that sounds useful. Any tips on how to actually do that?
Well, Pathway to Work suggests things like mindfulness, deep breathing, or even just taking short breaks to refocus.
Those are great ideas. Sometimes I get so caught up in work that I forget to take care of myself.
I'm totally guilty of that too. Maybe we should put take a deep breath reminders on our computers.
Maybe we should. Speaking of helpful reminders, didn't Pathway to Work have some other practical tips for work-life balance?
Oh, they did. And one of them really resonated with me. It's the idea of making a list of your top priorities.
Priorities, like both professional and personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they even suggest blocking off time on your calendar for family time, almost like scheduling a meeting with your loved ones.
Whoa, that's kind of genius. It's so easy to let work take over your entire calendar.
Right. But if you actually schedule in the things that matter most, you're way more likely to make them happen. So here's a challenge for you. What's one concrete action you could take today to prioritize something important to you?
That's a good question. I really need to start exercising more regularly. I often put it off because work takes over my evenings.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think I'm going to block off a specific time slot in my calendar for a workout. That way it'll feel like a non-negotiable appointment.
That's a fantastic idea. It's like you're making a commitment to your well-being. Another tip from the podcast that I love is learning to say no gracefully.
Oh, that's a tough one. I always struggle with that.
Me too. But the podcast gives a really helpful phrase you can use. You could say something like, I'd love to help, but I'm currently at full capacity. Could we revisit this next week?
Okay, I like that. It's polite, but firm. It sets a clear boundary without being rude.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being selfish. It's about preventing burnout so you can actually show up as your best self in all areas of your life.
So it's actually more beneficial to everyone in the long run.
Right. Because when you're constantly stretched thin, you're not going to be able to give your best to anything.
That's a really important point. Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this ties together.
Now for the fun part, self-care. Pathway to Work suggests scheduling a 30-minute joy break each day. So I have to ask, what brings you joy?
Oh, that's such a lovely idea. I think curling up with a good book and a cup of tea would be pure bliss for me.
Yeah.
Just completely disconnecting from the world for a little while.
That sounds so relaxing. I can already feel my shoulders unclench just thinking about it.
It's so important to find those little things that recharge you, right?
Totally. I think my joy break would definitely be a long walk in nature, just listening to the birds, feeling the fresh air. It's an instant mood booster for me.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
We often get so caught up in the daily grind that we forget to prioritize our own well-being.
It's so true. And speaking of disconnecting, the last insight from Pathway to Work that really hit home for me was the importance of disconnecting from technology.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. We talked about setting boundaries with work, but it's also about setting boundaries with our devices.
Right. They ask a really thought-provoking question in the podcast. When was the last time you intentionally unplugged?
Oof, that's a good one. I can't even remember.
Me neither. And then they ask, what did you gain from that experience?
Wow, those are powerful questions. I think we all need to be asking ourselves those more often.
I agree. I know that when I have managed to truly unplug, even for a day or two, I come back feeling so much more clear-headed.
Like you've hit the reset button on your brain.
Exactly. And I feel so much more present and connected to the people around me. It's amazing how much our devices can distract us from the simple joys of life.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into work-life balance and emotional intelligence.
We have. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I'm already feeling inspired to make some changes.
Me too. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about. Maybe we should all take a joy break now.
I love that idea. But before we do, I want to hear your thoughts on something.
It's funny, isn't it, thinking about how this whole work-life balance thing wasn't always such a big deal.
It's true. I wonder if it's because work itself has changed so much or maybe our values have shifted.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a bit of both. Like, in the past, work and personal life were way more separate. You clocked in.
Yeah.
You clocked out. Done. But now, with technology and everything,
Right.
the lines are so blurred.
It's like we're always kind of maybe working. Like we said before, that always-on thing is exhausting.
It is, and I think it makes it so much harder to disconnect.
Maybe we've just forgotten how to relax.
Well, maybe. Our brains definitely weren't designed for this constant stimulation overload. There's tons of research now showing how chronic stress leads to health problems,
Oh, yeah.
heart issues, weakened immune system, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
It's like we're running a marathon,
Yeah.
but at a sprint pace.
That's a good analogy. Makes you wonder, is perfect work-life balance even possible?
Right. For most people, I mean.
Maybe it's more about finding a rhythm that works for you.
I think that's a much better way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not about some magical perfect balance.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process, adjusting and adapting as things change. And everyone's going to have a different version of balance.
Exactly. Someone starting their career might prioritize work while someone else might want to spend more time with their family, right?
Yeah.
No one-size-fits-all solution.
Nope. It's all about figuring out what you need and what works for your life, not your neighbors or your bosses or whoever. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in.
Ah, okay. It helps us figure out what we're feeling,
Yeah?
what we need, and how to make choices that actually make sense for us.
Like an inner compass for this whole work-life balance journey.
I love that. But I bet some people are listening to this feeling overwhelmed. Like, where do you even start?
That's a really valid point.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good first step is just paying attention to your energy levels throughout the day. Notice when you're feeling energized and when you're feeling drained. It's about recognizing your own personal patterns.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way.
It's powerful. Once you know those patterns,
Yeah.
you can start tweaking things. Maybe you're most productive in the morning, so you block off that time for important tasks.
Right.
Or maybe you crash in the afternoon, so you schedule a break then, walk, meditate, whatever works.
Doesn't have to be a huge life overhaul.
Right,
Just small changes that can make a big difference.
exactly. Small changes, but consistent.
Mhm.
And be kind to yourself. You're not going to get it right every day.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, this whole conversation keeps making me think about our relationships
Yeah.
and how much our work-life balance or lack of it affects those relationships. The Pathway to Work podcast mentioned it,
They did.
but I think it's worth digging into a bit more.
Absolutely. Like, if you're constantly working late, stressed, bringing that stress home,
It puts a strain on everything, your partner, your kids,
friends, family,
even just your own ability to be present with people.
it's like carrying around this invisible weight.
It can lead to feeling resentful, neglected,
Isolated even.
and then it becomes a cycle, right? Stress hurts your relationships,
Yeah.
which causes more stress.
So how do we break out of that?
Communication, for
Yeah.
sure. Talking to your loved ones about what's going on, how they can help, making sure they know you're trying. It's about working together to find solutions.
So we need boundaries at work, A&D, in our personal lives.
Think so.
Oh,
Maybe talk to your partner about sharing responsibilities more fairly.
Okay.
Or schedule regular date nights, family dinners without technology, stuff like that.
Just being more intentional about being present.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, our relationships are what really matter. They deserve our time and attention.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about work-life balance and relationships today, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the bigger picture, like the long-term effects of all this. But first, let's give everyone a minute to process. Welcome back, everyone. As we've been talking about work-life balance, I've been thinking about the long game.
The long game. What do you mean?
Like, does prioritizing balance now at W
Uh-huh.
actually help you be more successful later in life?
You know, that's such an interesting question. And I think the answer is yes. Absolutely. It's like
Yeah.
investing in your future self.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Investing in your future self. So how does that work?
Okay, well, think about the opposite. When you're always stressed, overworked,
Yeah.
it takes a toll on you, right? Physically, mentally.
Right.
Over time, that can lead to burnout, health problems, even a shorter lifespan. You're depleting your reserves instead of filling them up.
That's a little scary to think about. It's so easy to just focus on what's right in front of you.
It is. We get caught up in the day-to-day and
Yeah.
forget about the bigger picture.
But if you make an effort to prioritize your well-being, you're setting yourself up for a better future, more energy,
Right.
more happiness, better relationships.
You'll be able to enjoy your retirement,
Yeah.
pursue your passions,
Yeah.
all of that.
It's like building a stronger foundation for your life.
Exactly. And it's never too late to start either. Small changes over time can make a huge difference.
So it's not about some perfect balance.
Yep.
It's about making choices that support you in the long run.
Choices that help you thrive. And Pathway to Work really stressed that emotional intelligence is crucial for this.
Ah, right. It gives you the tools to
Yeah.
figure out what you need, manage your emotions, make better choices.
Create a life that feels good,
Yeah.
A and D sustainable.
Like you're the architect of your own life.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to ask you something. We've talked about the individual benefits of work-life balance.
Right.
But what about the impact on the world?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Like, could prioritizing balance actually make the world a better place?
I mean, if more people were less stressed, happier,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't that have a ripple effect?
I think so. People would be more compassionate, more creative,
Right.
more engaged in their communities.
Like when our own cup is full, we can give more to others.
Exactly. Imagine a world where everyone prioritized their well-being.
Wow, yeah.
Could it lead to more sustainable practices, more equitable workplaces,
Yeah.
a greater sense of, caring?
That's a beautiful thought. Maybe finding balance isn't just about individual happiness.
I am not.
Maybe it's a key to a better world for everyone.
I love that. It's a good reminder that our choices matter. They have a bigger impact than we realize.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
We've covered so much today. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
I think
Yeah.
it's important to remember that everyone's journey is different. There's no right or wrong way to do this.
Be kind to yourself.
Exactly. Celebrate the small wins. With a little self-awareness, empathy, and some courage,
Yeah.
we can all create lives that feel balanced and fulfilling. And maybe, just maybe, make the world a little bit brighter in the process.
I love that.
It's a journey worth taking. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.